we could be
On
anywhere.
behalf of the ECBC Steering Committee, I would like to announce a very important step forward and a decisional point that was reached by the covered bond community yesterday. Yesterday, the Steering Committee and the Label Committee endorsed the announced harmonized transparency template, which is a pillar of the entire covered bond label story. Just to summarize very important steps that we have undertaken in the past, in 2010, was September 2010 in Copenhagen, during the plenary meeting, Mr. Stube from the European Central Bank asked the covered bond industry to develop a covered bond label. At that time, he asked to give a clear definition of what was a covered bond in order to allow investors to distinguish between what is a covered bond and what is not a covered bond. One of the major concerns of the ECB at that time, it was the blurring of the frontiers between this asset class and the new market innovations. The ECBC accepted immediately the challenge, and we developed what you know, the covered bond label. The covered bond label was not simply a definition, but we wanted to do much more. We wanted to give a quantitative database where every single investor in the market can have access for free and can have a good picture of the quality and the quantitative information on the covered bond space. That was the purpose of the market for Mr. Investors. But what was the purpose for Mr. Regulator? For Mr. Regulator, we have developed the covered bond label for different reasons. We know very well that the European institutions were under pressure to justify the preferential risk weighting given to covered bonds. This is an essential strategic position for the covered bond industry. We couldn't afford not to give an answer to this call from the European authorities. This is not a discussion on the European arena. It is a discussion on the Basel level. It was essential that a traditional European product at that time, it was a covered bond, was able to ensure the competitiveness of the European banks in the Basel debate. We accepted this challenge, and a lot of work, issues, gentlemen working and ladies working for the ECBC, tried to find a compromise. All of you know how it's difficult to find a compromise in Europe. But a decent compromise will bring us forward. Like for Greece, also for the covered bond label. And that was the same spirit. All of us forgot a bit our countries, and we tried to analyze what was the good thing for the asset class and what was the right way to answer to the European institutions. As you know, I'm very pleased to announce also that we had the first non-European label. So what was born as a European story has become a global story. In this room today, we have a representative of the Brazilian market, the Korean market, the Japanese market, the Singaporeans. They are all looking at the covered bond label as the definition, the market benchmark to decide what is a covered bond. And what is a covered bond is an essential question to be answered in the Basel Committee. Because if national regulators around the globe will give different interpretation of covered bonds, we will never be able to defend our preferential treatment. So this is the level of coverage of the covered bonds covered bond label that we have nowadays. We have more than 14 jurisdictions. I know that most of you are working on your national transparency template. I hope that Belgium is working on this. Canada, I'm sure about this. I see other Singaporeans are looking at this product as well, and South Korean. So we are really delighted to see all these activities and also all the hard work done by the back office of the issuers in order to provide correct and updated information. Well, I would like to give you our understanding of what does it mean transparency. Transparency is one of the nice words that we use in a normal life. Freedom and all these kind of words, where we have to understand what they mean and what is the... Well, we all can interpret transparency in different ways. And we try to give an interpretation of transparency in the covered bond space. We have spoken with different stakeholders trying to see what they would like to see in terms of transparency. Well, we identified three major dimensions of transparency, which are the three pillars of the covered bond label. First thing it is very important that investors will have very detailed information on the ISINs which are labeled. I recall that the label is given to the cover pool, so whatever is coming out from a cover pool can use a cover bond label. But the investors, they need to know which one is under this cover bond label, which one is not. So, and they have to have the same set of information for Spain, for Italy, for Germany, for the Netherlands. So we decided to develop a common framework on liabilities information. And we were very careful on finding very static information, providing information which are not available in Bloomberg, because we wanted to create an added value to the investors. So we provide information like the face value. The investors can discover if it's a tap issuance or it's not a tap issuance, if it's an extendable maturity, so if it's a soft bullet or if it's an hard bullet, if it's a conditional pass-through. They can discover if it's LCR compliant. It's a tricky point that I will come back on this point of the LCR. Then we move to the second dimension of transparency. I think that Mr. Investors would like to know what will happen in case of default of my issuers. Because the question number one is, should I take my money back or not? That's the big question that the investors, they want to know. So what we have done for years, we ask all the best legal experts, country per country, to build summaries of every single legislation which are available on the website. And also they are structured in a way where investors then can play, they can check asset liabilities, they can check all the information one by one and compare by countries. So they can take Germany, compare with this with the Netherlands, with Spain, with UK, and they can understand the difference. We don't want to make life easier. We want just to explain why life is difficult. That's it. There's no more than this. And then the real challenge was on the asset side. On the asset side, when we started to work, we had not even websites. Most of the websites were not even in English. So we had to move little by little all the rules of the cover bond label on a common ground. And that was, I mean, analysts supported us in helping us to understand what were the key questions for investors and what was implementable. And little by little, we moved to a common guidelines, then to national transparency template, and now I think that we succeed to reach the real target. Every single investor can compare data on the asset side from Singapore to Scotland. That's the real added value of this national transparency template. And everyone will be obliged to disclose this information and to make this available. Now, as I said to you, we don't want to explain, we don't want to make life easier. Investors, they have to do their due diligence, but they will be allowed to understand why an LTV in Germany is a certain number and why an LTV in UK is a different number. Because they will have a set of information that Anna will explain that will allow them to understand where they are and what they are buying. That was the purpose. Now, tomorrow will be Thursday. In 3 Thursdays' time, LCR will be binding for all of you. So we are getting there very timely to provide a unique instrument to allow investors to make their due diligence from the ISINs via the legislation till the asset backing the cover pool. And it's very important that all of you help us to make good commercial and publicity of this instrument, because this is important for investors, for auditors. We know that KPMG, Pricewaterhouse, Deloitte are all working very hard on your portfolio, checking if you have a self-certification, if you have evidence that all these bonds are compliant with Article 129.7. All of them are doing this job, and they have to finish this job by the 1st of October, 3 weeks' time. The ECBC wanted to be in time. As we were in time with the cover bond label, we wanted to be in time for this challenge, and we were in time. And this is only because of the hard work of a group of people who really believed in providing a pan-European product to ensure that this will work and to help the work of the European Commission, the European Central Bank, the European Banking Authority, who supported this asset class very, very strongly in the international forum, because it's a way to improve financial stability. And that's why we work so hard, And I would like to thank publicly the support of the Covered Bond Investor Council, that there was an intense communication with them. And this is, I think, a very important achievement. In order to make our covered bond label a bit sexier, we have invented also some statistics on the liability side. So we had a very boring Excel sheet. Now you can, as an investor, you can select what you want. And for example, you can have the structure of a covered pool issue by issue. You can select only issuance above 500 million, only below. You can decide only on private placement, only on public placement. So it's a little toy for the investors to waste their weekends and trying to analyze what they're buying. This will be available starting from next week on the covered bond label, and we complete the 3 pillars of transparency. And there was a lot of discussion, and I would like to conclude to reconfirm our thank you and for the hard work done to all the people in this room and outside this room to reach this very important result. We have delivered this before that the Commission will even thinking of how the covered bond market is functioning. The covered bond consultation paper is not yet published, but we were so proactive that after 5 years of hard work, we are here putting a result on the table of the European Commission before they start to work. Thank you very much.